Recording in progress.
All right, we'll call the Monday, October 11th, 2021 St. Joe Planning Commission meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Any changes to the agenda? Any questions? Okay. Okay, we have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
Second? All right. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Minutes from September 13th.
Move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any comments, changes, additions? All right. Hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, on to new business. Before we open the public hearing, you want to give us a quick rundown, Nate?
Yes, definitely. So we'll tackle the next three items in a quick presentation here. So for items 5A, 5B, and 5C, we have a request this evening for a preliminary plat and a final plat for a project titled Rivers Bend 4. So this project is being submitted by CLC Partners, who is the applicant. The existing zoning is R4. R4 does allow medium density residential, 2 to 6 units an acre. The project is located off of College Avenue and County Road 121, northwest of Lanigan Way. And the access would be directly off the county road, with this project being a cul-de-sac. We are awaiting some engineer comments. I did provide an update for some of those comments. One of the preliminary comments does include, a couple of the comments do include that the developer will have to put in additional fire hydrant, provide additional storm sewer inlets, increase the street standard, and clarification on some sub-drainage. There are wetlands on this property. The wetlands are not being proposed to be disturbed, so no impacts will occur to the wetland areas. The stormwater will be retained on part of Outlot A for the plat. So for your consideration this evening is a preliminary plat and a final plat, and we've included both of those resolutions. So right now we'd ask that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing, and we can answer any questions should the Planning Commission have for this item.
All right. So with that, we'll save all any questions we have till after the public hearing, but right now we'll open the public hearing for any comments from the audience. Anybody wishing to speak? Yeah. Yep, you gotta come up, give your name, address, and wait till you're at the microphone so we can hear it online.
Gary Marvin, 9352 290th Street. My concern is just where is the storm and all the water going to go? It goes to that holding pond, then it goes to a drainage ditch, and then out to the South River. But someone's got to maintain that drainage ditch. Beaver have a tendency to build a dam there and start flooding things back. So that would be the only thing I'm wondering. And then storm sewer,
that would be an engineering question. Yeah, probably at the council table, the engineer will be there to answer why, what, and where, and how, and, yeah.
I can see that holding pond there doesn't drain down through the drainage ditch, it's backed up with beaver dams. That goes back into the property that's being developed.
And the same owner, I mean, it's the same owner that owns that property adjacent to that, so I know he said he would address that at one point in time, but maybe we should follow it up or make it a consent.
The other land, person owns another land just down, he cleaned his little drain ditch out 2 years ago when things were back in the,
And there's water problems in that area anyway.
it's high water.
Yeah, it's in the floodplain, actually.
Okay, that was my only question.
Okay.
On our diagram, it does show a proposed stormwater basin within this piece of property. So, I said, on our diagrams for this piece of property that's being developed, it shows a proposed stormwater basin on the east corner.
So essentially where the cul-de-sac ends and the last townhomes are, right past those townhomes will be an outlot, and then all the stormwater will be retained within that outlot through a stormwater basin. And that outlot's right before the pond that's out there, the wetland that's existing. So the water should funnel over there through the ditches or through the storm sewer collection system to the basin.
And then it goes down to the drainage.
I believe, I'd have to confirm with our engineer. Yeah, so I can definitely touch base. Yeah,
Is in that outlot A, which you're calling, that's where the beaver are, and they just go down the drainage ditch and they have their little dams being built.
okay,
That's what backside is.
Okay.
okay.
All right, we'll note that in our comments to the engineer and make sure he looks into that for sure. And we can just, is that just a private drainage ditch or is it a judicial ditch?
So that would be a ditch that's dedicated to the public, so that would be a ditch that ultimately the city would.
City would?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so that's a city responsibility to take care of any beaver dams.
Yeah, so the developer will construct that initially, and put in those improvements, the engineer will come out, we'll check that, make sure it's up to all the standards and that, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Then it goes from the person who owns the developer, it goes to a private person who owns that land. Who's gonna take care of that drainage? Is the city also?
So if it's within a publicly dedicated easement, the city would retain that through the public drainage easement. If it's not a public dedicated easement, then it would be under the responsibility of the private. Yeah. So it doesn't fully answer your question, but,
It's still, the beaver could build the dam right there and back it all up too.
right,
I read the farmer cleaned his out because after the 2 beaver dams back to back, it started going on to his property. So that's where he went right away and cleaned it all the way out down, all the way through, and I think his land went all the way to the river, so he cleaned it all out.
So it sounds like regardless of this development, it's an issue that just needs to be monitored. Whether this development goes in or not, it's still a ditch that carries water away from the existing development, right?
correct.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's something we have to, that's why I asked if it was judicial ditch running through that private property. That, then it would fall on the county,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yep.
if it's not, then it's on him, so we'll just make sure we keep track of it.
The water that goes down under the 121 in the ditch cuts over behind the Flanagan or whatever it is, and then it goes into that holding pond and down the drainage ditch.
Mhm.
So even all the water from the county road makes its way down to that drainage ditch. And the holding pond that's across the road from Kennedy comes and goes underneath 121 and then makes its way
So the answer would be to eliminate the beaver. You know, so maybe the owner of the property, that should be addressed officially.
And somebody did go down and, trap the beaver,
Mhm.
and that's why it's dried up now, and because of the drought. So,
But I mean, just trapping them, they come back.
yep, they can come back.
I mean, I don't know if there's a process of eliminating beaver. Maybe the engineers on this panel would know that.
They keep coming, you just keep trapping
I don't
them.
know if there's a way to just mitigate them out of the area or,
We'll definitely make note of this and I'll forward it
Yeah,
on to the
this is
engineer.
beyond the plating issue, this is more a long-term issue for the whole
Yeah.
area, so yeah.
Yep.
It's something we'll take care of, we have to address, so, thanks.
Thank you for your comments.
Anybody else wanna speak? Or, go ahead.
I'm Sandy Coleman, I live at 311 Langley Way Southeast in City. So I have 3 levels of questions, and my first level is the development and the intent of the development. Is it meant to be a owner-occupied residential housing type place, or is it meant to be a rental community?
from what I know, it's owner occupied until they apply for rental license after the fact. Because there's a separate, if you wanna rent out your property in an R1 area, you know, was it R1 or R4 out there?
So it's R4, so they would have to obtain a rental license. The intent is for them to be rental. It'd be
Oh.
owned by a association, or not association, but essentially a LLC. And the LLC would oversee, but the individual townhomes would be rental and have to go through the rental license. Yep.
So they are designated that they plan this for rental.
Okay.
That's what's been communicated to us from the development.
Do we know the price point of the identified units and what those?
I don't, but we do have one of the developers here who could help answer.
Do you want to wait for that, or?
Let me know the questions you have and I'll try to address them.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you want to go ahead and address that one now, but I can start my questions too.
Yeah, go ahead there.
You just give us your name and company.
Rick Polinsky, Kennel Construction Management. I'm the general contractor and investor in the project, in the final project. So they are, plan is for them to be rental. And this project, the units were, and I brought some brochures so you guys can see what we're doing. And you could actually walk through the exact units that because we're doing 44 of them in Stockton right now. And that's in our trails. It's in a brand new development, just like we did 28 of these in St. Cloud. There's 1,780 square feet, twin homes, each side is 1,780, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, granite, center islands, LP siding, Anderson windows. So they're, a twin home building is around $600,000, around $300,000 each side. So these are the highest end rentals in Center Minnesota. We start at $2,000 a month. We have 3 criteria for bringing in our tenants. Their income needs to be 3 times the monthly rent. We do criminal background and 700+ credit. So we have very, very good tenants. They generally stay a few years, and to our surprise, even, you know, with getting near the school district, most of the tenants are empty nesters, and some young 30-something professionals. We have a lot of people from the VA, Century Care, and so on. We have, and the company that I work with and invest with, they own a lot of units around the state. They're a very, very good management company. And so the units themselves, the landscaping, everything is very, very professional. So,
I got one question.
Might as well just hang tight in case she's got.
The next question that I had was more related to the infrastructure outside of that particular development.
I can answer that question. If we can go to your next question too, and I'll answer both.
Well, my third question was more about the developer in general, because it'll be the same developer under his LLC, is the same developer for the neighborhood that I'm within. And as I'm reading about the protections of the wetlands and the requirement for there to be a silt fence put in to protect the land erosion, and I mean, I'm just getting that part because I don't research it very much, but along our property line, there was a silt fence put in, and that never was taken care of on the back end. So part of my worry is, what will that look like in, you know, if there isn't that maintaining happening for the property that's already been developed, how does that look for the new developer? And then also, for, as another example, there's like a plot of lawn, next to, the man's house, that is still owned by the developer, and it isn't maintained very well, and it gets mowed a couple of times a year, but, so that kind of goes for credibility piece for me, and a little bit of concern with that. And I will share that I heard, from a couple different people, not one, that there's sort of a reputation of ask for forgiveness instead of permission, and kind of come back and asking for changes in occurrences after the fact. So that's my worry. This is my home community. I lived away from it for many years. I chose to go back to it. This is where I want to retire. And I would like, my vision for the community is, you know, something that would be a family that would just live with us, also friendly to the city.
Thanks.
Would you like me
Thank
to?
you.
Would
Yeah,
you like
go
me
ahead.
to?
You
Okay.
got a chance, yeah.
So the first question related to the infrastructure. So part of the challenge with this is the county owns the right-of-way for the road, County Road 121. So they are reviewing the project and would suggest any infrastructure upgrades or enhancements that may include a right turn lane to enter the property. As far as other infrastructure, we are asking that the sidewalk get constructed within the cul-de-sac, and part of that challenge would be to create a safe crossing. So that will also be addressed in coordination with the county, since the county owns the right-of-way for the county road there. But we'll want to make sure that there is safe crossing. And then also further down where Jade Road intersects, that intersection, once that roadway to the north across from Jade Road is constructed, that's going to put more pressure on that intersection and safety especially. The more homes we have constructed out there, of course, the more likelihood that we'll have maybe students walking and biking to school, and that poses safety concerns. So that may be eventually a target for a roundabout. That's a bigger, larger conversation with the county, and of course a cost sharing conversation. The second question related to the developer and the wetlands. So when the developer constructs the public infrastructure improvements and does the grading and that, they are required to do the erosion control and put in those measures and protect any of the sensitive areas, especially the wetlands. So they'll have to have a silt fence in front of there. And we do have our consulting engineer, SCH, go out there and inspect those things to make sure that they're adhering to those during the construction. And then after the fact, it was the silt fence, that part of the question. Was there concern that the silt fence was not taken down, or?
Yeah, you can see some of the orange fencing that's sort of covered over with some wooded areas, kind of like just left there.
Okay.
And I think similarly at the end of our block, there's like a pile of dirt or, you know, something that was kind of left by the developer there. And so those types of things are, I'm not.
Okay, wonderful. So we'll note that and make sure that during that process that our consulting engineer and the folks out there inspecting that are aware of those and making sure that those are addressed when the project is closed out. So that.
No, not really, except for I would like the stuff in my backyard taken care of as well for my process.
Okay.
I was gonna say, sometimes the developer's gonna build the roads, put in the storm sewer, water mains, sanitary, and then, I think in that development, there are separate home builders too, right? So when the home builder comes in, you still have to have that silt fence while they're disturbing your yard, and then once your grass is growing, then it can be removed. So it can't be removed until you have a fully established yard.
Correct,
So-
yeah, so I think it's like 70% vegetation.
Consistent, not just.
Yeah,
so
consistent throughout
so
the
then-
lot, then they
then
can remove it.
That
yeah.
needs to be the home builder. If it's your backyard, the home builder should have removed it,
Yeah.
not the developer. So,
And with this project, we have two parties. We have the developer, which is CLC Partners, which is the one that is putting in the public infrastructure, doing the grading, doing
Yep.
all the sidewalks, roads, everything. And then the intent is then for them to then sell the individual lots to Poplinski, who would then operate and then build the townhomes on those.
And maybe one thing that might help you with that is, you know, when they're doing individual lots, like in your development, they're done kind of, they're not done in a row, they're not done all at the same time. Ours are. So when we final grade everything at the same time. I've been in development for a long time, so I know the frustration in development where it's done the way you're talking about. The benefit on our end is we do all the final grade at the same time, we bring in all the sod at the same time, we do add a lot of trees, we do a lot of nice landscaping work. And then at that point, once you, I think it said, once you're at 70%, we leave you 100%, and you pull those silt fences. And a lot of times we'll put up signs to be aware of the wetland and so on. SEH, they do a great job coming out and monitoring and making sure that we get it all done at the right time, and you don't pull those silt fences until everything is done the way it's supposed to be done. But they do monitor us quite closely. But it all gets done 100% in the end. And so
Thanks.
it'll look very nice.
Good. All right. All right, sir. Go ahead.
Thomas Shore, I have been planning in the way southeast, and this fellow is the only one I've been able to understand. I'm hearing challenged, and he's about the only one I can understand here. But at any rate, before we bought our lot, I think it was 5 years ago, I talked at length with Cory Ibbett, and he talked about the vision that they had for expanding
So long-term Lanigan connects to future Jade extension?
Yeah, so essentially Lanigan, where it dead ends, the remaining property to the east, whenever that is platted out, that will be required to connect to 91st, which is across from Jade Road.
Yep.
And then the traffic will have two ways out and in of the development that's out there right now, the patio home development. So this one is a cul-de-sac and is located to the north of the existing patio home, so there won't be any connections made to Lanigan Way as part of this project. All the traffic will come in and out of this development only from the county road.
And I would point out as well, and it might make you feel better, with, the zoning that's on this piece of property, it allows for a much higher density of a lot more units than we're doing. So we're putting in 28, I mean, you could have done, it could have done more, but, I think it's, the need, for higher end, basing the way we're doing it is really strong. Our other projects have been really successful. I think there's it brings a lot of good people to the community, keeps your traffic down from what it might have been under the current zoning. So, I understand the concern, but I just, look at what we're doing versus, what might have been done.
So he did say that road is not gonna connect, with that new property.
It doesn't touch Lanigan, and Nate and I did talk about it, we wanna do a sidewalk, we wanna make that crossing useful for pedestrians, try to make it as safe as possible, so we're gonna put some money into that. I always try to put sidewalks in regardless of the place or not, it's a good thing about that one, so.
It still increases the traffic on College Avenue proper, because you still have all of that extra amount of individuals now going with all the students, with all the kids going to school, and all the trying to go to work. I have a hard enough time leaving Lanigan Way and taking a left-hand turn in the mornings if I don't hit it directly. So I'm concerned about that. I just want to say one other thing, what is a little disturbing.
Ma'am, we have to step up there. Yeah, thanks.
I'm not an expert on any protocols with, city council meetings or with planning committee meetings, but it is disturbing to me to have a public hearing and a final plan all implemented in one hearing. To me, that's kind of telling me, come and say what you want to say, but we're gonna go ahead with it anyways, and that doesn't feel good. So I just need to, yes.
Bob?
This board is advisory to the council. I sit on the council.
Okay,
So it comes to the council and we hear it all again.
okay.
But
You
this
know.
is the first time we've seen this as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a comment. I understand that you take it to the city council, but do you not as a sub-council have to approve it before it goes to the full council?
We recommend approval to the board. Yeah.
Approval or denial.
Yep.
So, again, I mean, it's still, there's the public hearing for the big council, which I'm sure people plan to attend, but it feels just kind of like, I had no idea this was happening until somebody showed up with a flyer on my door, and it just doesn't feel
Right.
like great communication. So that was my only point.
Thanks.
Hi.
Thanks.
There is an online dialogue between our engineers, the school district, which is kind of a hard nut to crack to get to do stuff for the safety, the flow of traffic and whatever. So you're dealing with more than one entity there as far as to correct. We are aware of that there is a problem out there with traffic and safety, specifically right now, it's a drop off at Kennedy School with all the traffic and everything like that. But that kind of goes through the whole system there. So we're continuing trying to address it, trying to find a solution. But you gotta deal with the county, you gotta deal with the school district, so you have to get everybody on the same page to deal with that problem.
And I actually just had a meeting this morning with the school officials out at Kennedy, and they are working on a safe routes to school plan. So part of that is compiling the data and understanding the concerns and the needs and then the future growth potential. And then from that, a formal plan would be adopted. And then once a formal plan's adopted, then that would be initiative to then go for grant money, or then like Mr. Loso mentions, a collaboration between the county, city, and school. So
Well, if you're aware of the danger that's there now, why wouldn't you take care of that before you put more vehicles on the road?
That's an issue that we're trying to get an answer to, And we have to collaborate with other entities. If it was just us fixing it, we could fix it. But then you're encroaching on other people's properties, other people's jurisdictions. And everybody doesn't always agree, because, you got dollars involved. Who's gonna spend, everybody looks at their budgets, well, I don't have this for this.
And if I may, it's hard, it's not a city-owned street, so it's not the city's, not to say it's not the city's responsibility, but the city can't go in there and just build what the city feels is needed there. It has to come through the county, and so there is a need to work together to do it. County's big, lots of projects, lots of roads, lots of schools that have similar issues with congestion and traffic and safety issues, so it's a process.
But I think the point that she's trying to make is that it's already a problem.
Yep.
Should we approve this plat to increase the problem until it's finally taken care of before the fact?
I understand that, yeah.
Then the legal comes in. Do we have the right to refuse a property owner to develop
yeah,
based
so
upon,
legally, they can develop this property between 2 to 6 units an acre. They are proposing to be within that. Like Rick Poblinski had mentioned, they could be more dense than what they are proposing. So we are bounded by the legality of the existing zoning, which is R4, which allows for development of this nature. Keep in mind too that the county road is a collector road. So as a collector, it is meant to carry traffic through not just the neighborhood, but outside of the neighborhood. So it's a north-south connector road. So it is serving that purpose, but kind of like I mentioned earlier, the intersection by Jade and College and the county road there by the school, that is probably a likely target eventually when the road to the north gets built for larger infrastructure improvements. A roundabout, possibly. We don't have a timeline on that because the road to the north hasn't been constructed. So that's really development driven and would be addressed at the appropriate time for that.
Yeah. And I would say is that Gene and I both deal with this on a daily basis in our regular careers, and I actually work for a different county. And like I know Stearns County has 1,100 miles of road they're responsible for. Most schools in every community are on a county road. So this is not unique, but it is still important. And I always tell folks, until we get the solution resolved, each driver is responsible for their own safety. So you control, like I tell my kid, there's a couple intersections in town, he's a young driver, he's not allowed to use those intersections. He goes out of his way and takes a different way. And I can watch on my phone and see where he's driving, and keys disappear if he takes that route. you know, so if it's really busy at 7:30, because school, you got hundreds of cars, and my wife taught at that school for 20-plus years, so we're very well aware of that, and then she would leave and get to work 15 minutes earlier because she didn't want to get stuck in the mess. So if you're nervous about making left-hand turns, you know, it's valid. So I tell folks there's a few things we can do. You can take a right, go into town, it takes longer, or you maybe leave 15 minutes earlier, or do things until the government agencies can address the issues, you know, because you're responsible for your own safety. So I don't like, I always get a little nervous when people say, oh, I just close my eyes and gun it, you know, so I mean, you know, so every road in itself is, that's just a static piece of bituminous and blacktop and concrete. So the road itself is not dangerous, the drivers are. So it's human beings that cause the issues. So I always say until this does get resolved, we can own our own, try to reduce. You can't predict somebody pull out in front of you. You can't predict somebody crossing center line. One of my coworkers just got rear-ended by a drunk driver at 8 a.m. in the morning. Can't predict that. You know, it's, so we have to own our own safety and do what we can to limit those conflicts. So, but yeah, it's something that I know the city's very active in working with the schools. So as part of, whether it's this development will add probably 200-300 more cars to the road that already has several thousand. So is it make it less safe incrementally, but it's already in a situation that we dealt with. And like I said, I don't know if we can use this as a reason to not let them develop. Is that because we think College Avenue is bad? That's an issue the city needs to address with the county. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Did you have something else you want to mention, sir?
I just wanted to say that my concerns personally were quite a bit related when this gentleman mentioned that's a separate section that is not going to be connecting with our particular road, so.
Yeah, that keeps a few hundred cars from coming through your neighborhood to get to the same outlet. Yeah, you bet.
Personally, that kind of relays a lot of my.
Okay. All right.
I just have one question. I don't know what R4 is that renting? You can rent?
No, so R4 is medium density residential, so it allows for a multitude of different uses from townhomes to patio homes or attached patio homes.
That can be rented?
Yeah, so they would just have to go through our rental process and procedure and get the license for that. Yep.
Could even be apartment building, I believe.
What was that?
Apartment buildings,
In R4?
yeah.
I do not believe R4 allows apartment buildings. It's more your transitional homes. Your middle housing is what it's called, townhomes, patio homes. You can go up to 6 units an acre. So, you know, you could do a project where it does result in a more dense, built out project, yeah.
So before we discuss anything, any other public comments, and we can close the public hearing? Then we can ask any questions if we have any.
And I just noticed
Are you
someone
gonna
is
stick around for a little? Oh,
on the Zoom that wants to get let in, so let me let them in real quick,
okay.
sorry.
See if they have any comments. Joan is waiting.
So for those who are on the Zoom call, we still are in the public hearing for the Rivers Bend 4 project, which is the townhome development, 28 townhomes, 13 tracks. So we still are hearing comments if anyone has any on the Zoom.
Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public, oh,
I would just like to add one thing about,
okay.
about rental, because it tends to have kind of a negative connotation. Again, it's why I like to have people stop out. There's been a big shift nationally in the way people live and how they invest in their real estate. The big
Thanks. And you'll stick around in case we have questions? Yeah, you bet. All right, let's,
Okay, so you're eliminating government
Should we-
subsidized housing.
Bob, can we close the public hearing first? Then
Oh, okay,
you can ask
yeah,
them, yeah,
yeah.
then we can ask questions, yeah.
Yeah.
All right? Good, all right, we'll close the public hearing and then, all right, go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so you're eliminating government subsidized housing, affordable housing, Section 8 housing, kind of retrospectively.
We couldn't do that if we wanted because of the quality and the size and everything.
Okay.
That we put in, we're above market rate straight across the board.
Yeah.
Okay,
Like I said, we start at $2,000.
okay,
A month, and run up right now to about 2,300. And, like I said, your qualifications, you need to have 3 times, so you need to make $72,000 or more to pass our qualifications.
so you got semi-professionals, doctors, professors, people like that that are just here for maybe 2-3 years. And-
Yes.
Yeah, okay, well, I'll say too, in a different community, my brother and his wife, both well-educated, master's degrees, young family, they live in a similar development because they want to be gone every weekend. They want to go to my parents' lake home every weekend. They don't want to maintain anything. And they lived in that same townhome for I think 7 years now because they love it. They moved in brand new, like you said, high end. It's just as nice as my house and it fits their lifestyle. I just wanted to reiterate that, yeah.
The concrete driveway, the big double garage heated,
Yeah.
we try to make it so they don't want to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but a lot of people with their big home, the kids will be lake home, they rent from us and then head up to the lake.
And
We
they,
see a lot of that.
they do that a lot, yeah, you bet. Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
as and this wouldn't be for you, it'd be for the developer, but some of the questions on the storm water basin. 'Cause I pulled up the Stearns County map that shows that pond in the back. And by the looks of where that stormwater pond or basin is, that big pond that's already there is already, is there. I mean, they're showing that there's wetlands and what's to happen with that big pond.
Yeah, it looks like their pond, proposed drainage pond, is already in part of the existing, I think that's a natural wetland on the north side of Lanigan. So it looks like it eats up the maybe first 100 feet of that based on their drawing. We just, basically she counted lots over, looked at their proposed contours for their pond. It looks like it's falling in that where the big pond narrows up, the very end. I don't know if you can, are you able to pull up
Have
an aerial?
you seen?
So that'd be more of a comment for Randy to take a look at before the city council meeting?
Is that a projector?
Yeah. But I guess the main comment is just address the pond location and,
And what's the plans for the existing, is that
So on page 8 of the packet, I think that depicts the stormwater basin pretty well. Also on page 12 of the packet, there's also a stormwater basin on there, and it will show existing edge of water, wetland setback. Part of the requirement too, and one of the comments from the engineer, is to ensure that the wetland that's depicted on here is certified and delineated. So they will need to verify that to make sure that what they're showing here for the wetland boundaries is actually what the wetland boundaries is.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, and then when they do that, it'll be not somebody associated with them would come out and throw flags in the ground and mark the wetland, so.
And it's based more on, it's based on more than just water depth and whatever, it's the type of soil, it's the vegetation.
It'll be beyond the water.
It could be
Yes.
beyond the water, it could look dry, it could look uphill, but it's dependent upon
What-
what the soils are
Yep.
there.
There's like 8 different types of wetlands, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, more than that. Yeah, and some of them, they may only be wet a few days out the year. So it all depends. But in any case, it's considered a wetland regardless of the type, and then conditions would have to be met for that.
So how far away, if they're constructing the new one here, what are the setbacks from, if you're constructing a new stormwater basin to catch, then what's the setback from the existing? I mean, they're not planning on modifying the current one that's there, that big,
Nope.
So that existing is an existing wetland, so this pond that I
Natural,
believe they're
yeah.
proposing to build is to collect, treat, retain water. I don't know if there's infiltration in this, probably not out there with the soil, so retain, hold on to, collect water, and then release treated water at a controlled rate to the adjacent existing wetlands. So there wouldn't be, they're not gonna go in and modify the existing natural wetland, so.
okay.
So how does that work when that whole area is considered a floodplain? And, I mean, there's a aggregate company on the other side of the river that's taking aggregate.
Right next to the river?
Yeah, and they're hitting water real fast. So I don't know how this drains into the existing wetlands when it's on a wetland. But I guess it goes to the ditch,
Yeah.
and then
Well,
it's funneled down to the river.
yeah, floodplain's different than wetland.
Okay,
The floodplain can be dry most of the time and still be flooded, and in that case, that's why the foundation's real high. I mean, this is much higher than it is closer to the river where we have that other development with the larger lots.
yeah,
And, that's the home foundations have to be outside the floodplain, and when it floods, yes, whether it's a pond or a wetland, it's all gonna fill in
okay.
once every 50 or 100 years, hopefully.
They moved that number up, didn't they?
Yeah, they changed
It's
some
a
of the models.
500-year floodplain now, or?
Yeah. Yep.
On a
So-
related issue, this might be a stupid question, sorry, but for the developer, are you planning on basements?
No. They're slab on grade 2 stories.
Okay.
And I brought in a brochure, so you can go online and actually do a virtual tour of the units.
Mhm.
But no, they're.
No basements.
I know the land out there a little bit, so no, we're not gonna go down.
Yep, I know that was an issue with the houses along Lanigan, because the water table was so high.
No, they're all 2 stories, but.
Okay. So I noticed the engineer's letter was from September 28th, and no response from the developer yet to most of those?
No,
or
so
some of
we,
them?
we actually just got that on Friday, so then when we got that, we forwarded it on to
Oh.
the developer. So we're working through those concerns and issues, yep.
Okay. So does it say on our plat recommendation of plat approval to address engineer comments prior to?
Yeah, so in the resolutions for the preliminary and final plat, it essentially says all the conditions adhered to as indicated in the developer's agreement.
Okay.
So in the developer's agreement, that's where we'll insert the engineer items.
Memo.
And we have one of the sections highlighted on the developer's agreement that makes mention that at the time the packets went out, we had informal comments, but we didn't have that formal comment from the engineer yet, but with
Yeah.
that, we will put that in there.
Okay.
Okay, Nate, the developer's agreement is after the plat approval, correct?
So the
Or is they're gonna go hand in hand or at the same time
the developer's agreement would go with the final plat.
to the council?
Yeah, yep, so both the preliminary plat and final plat would go to the council.
Okay, so before I look at it at the council level, I would like to see all the engineers' comments being addressed one way or the other. And also the public works director comments being addressed one, either yay, nay, or, some type
Yeah.
of compromise there, or
So,
between the,
yeah, Ryan Wentzman, our public works director, the only comment he had was to ensure that the roadway is not dedicated as a private roadway, which isn't the case. It's gonna be public. And then the engineer items, yeah, we'll be working with the developer between now and the council meeting, to square away some of the concerns that we have from a staff level.
okay, good. That's all I wanted to see at the next level.
Looking at this, I mean, I kind of just roughly looking at the comments and the plaque in front of us and the things that aren't addressed yet, it kind of seems to me like there's a lot of, the picture doesn't match what the final result should look like. I mean, when we're talking, there's additional storm sewer, we've got some questions on wetland delineations, which could impact location of pond. We don't have sidewalks shown, there's some talk about changing some of the lot line angles to accommodate sidewalk along the cul-de-sac. I guess before I would wanna approve this preliminary plat, I guess I would be more inclined to wanna see more of these engineers' comments addressed and have the picture more closely match what is required
At this level.
at this level.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
It seems almost like a incomplete drawing at this point, I mean, from my eyes,
okay. You got the engineer's eyes, so I'm,
some days,
Yeah, I kinda wish
maybe we're here.
I wish the developer would've gotten the comments a little bit more than a day before here,
Yes.
so then they could offer a bullet point list of, this is what we're doing. Yes, we can do this, no, because if there's something in here, I know there's been times where we've had to negotiate and talk through things, and some things change and some things don't. Based on, not every comment that our engineer makes, I agree with all the time, or do we accept? So, it's just a matter of, it'd been nice to see their response to this before we get here today.
And it doesn't look like they've had the
No,
opportunity to respond.
Cause you just got it when?
Yeah, so we got it Friday. So once
Friday.
we got it Friday, we sent it off, and that's when we sent off the update to the planning commission with those comments when we got them. Yep.
So do we have the ability at this time to table this till,
So
or
you.
what is our?
Yeah, so you would, as long as there's conditions that the developer, that you're asking the developer to meet to come back with. So if it's engineering items and you would like to see, staff work with the developer to address the engineering items and come back with a revision that's reflective of that, we do have the ability to do that. We have 60-day review. We can extend that if there is pending issues or concerns. So or go ahead, Chad.
Question, was the intent for did the developer wanna start grading this fall?
Yes, the intent is to, it would have been nice to, the best roads generally for us, we like to put in the water and sewer.
Yeah, so that was kind of my,
Let it sit,
yep.
and then finish the top
Yep.
infrastructure in the spring.
So I do know we allow, not we, in several of the cities that I work with, they allow the rough grading to begin. So if the center line of the road is exactly where they want it and everybody's okay with that, we do allow that prior to final plat approval, but I don't know if that's something St. Joe has done in the past.
So I don't know the historical background. I wish I did, but yeah, I've seen in other entities in that
Good.
where you can get a land disturbance permit
Yes.
and you can do just the grading.
We could maybe get, looking at this, none of the comments probably affect the water main, sanitary, and the center line of the road. And then by the time we get all, then, that's probably a month or two of work, and then by that time, we've resolved curb and gutter, storm sewer replacement, which is a couple of comments, lot lines. And, you know, I don't know if that's something the city has allowed in the past. I mean, something to look into, because I hate to, you know, like I said, it is best to put it in this fall, and then you come back in the spring, trench settlements are usually identified, and then you can pave it and then start building. So in a perfect world, that's the right way to, I mean, optimal way to do it.
Yeah, so I can definitely confirm that and see what's been done in the past. If that is something that the city has done, we can look at doing or issuing a land disturbance permit for at least some of the grading.
Yeah.
No infrastructure improvements, things of that nature.
And I think it would maybe depend on our engineer's comfort level on the alignment of the road, because that's gonna define what they wanna disturb and where they're gonna put the water main and,
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would defer a lot to the engineer on that. Yeah.
okay.
What kind of timeline is on grading?
No?
Can you do that all year round, throughout the year?
Well, ideally, just because, even 28 units is a lot to construct in one season.
Yeah.
We can do it, we've done it in the past, but you really need to get on it in the spring. So, having the underground infrastructure in this fall would be an enormous benefit to finishing the project next year, which neighbors, everybody wants. I mean, once you're in there, you want all that sod, you want all that, everything complete, the final lift, all of that by the end of the year.
Mhm.
To do that, and I know we're only talking about, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but that's a lot when you're talking,
I agree, that's kinda why I brought up the question of a compromise. If we're not, if there's some issues we have with things that don't affect water main, sanitary, and the alignment of the road, well, maybe they can start with that. We'll come back in 2, 3, 4 weeks, whatever it takes. I don't know, does it have to be a full month before we meet again?
Yeah, unless the planning commission calls a special meeting, yeah, we'd have to do
We
it
could
in
meet
November.
next week if we had to, continue this conversation.
Yeah. Corey, do you know, are you using Will again on this development? Will Houston, is he doing it? John White, okay. Has he had a chance to look at this, do you know?
Yeah, I don't know that he's got a chance to respond to Randy's
Yeah, okay.
comment yet.
Because I was just wondering, if we decide to meet in a week, is that enough time for him to coordinate with Randy and say, yeah, these are all the things we can do, and then turn it around quick?
So, one thing to keep in mind too, since this is a public hearing and does trigger that,
Yeah.
is if we do call a special meeting, we do have to meet the notice requirements again and do a continuation of that for, which is a 10-day notification. So that would be another mailing in that, if it's a special meeting in that.
So that would put us at 2 weeks from today if we wanted to stay on a Monday, right?
Yeah, 2 weeks from today, and then we could give the respective engineers and people 2 weeks to, come to a conclusion of the concerns and.
And maybe give some of the folks in the audience too to take a look at the information he can provide as far as either virtually or take a drive to Sartell and take a look and see if it alleviates some of their concerns. Yeah, so,
And also, from what I understand, is you're not just talking about grading, you're talking about the infrastructure in the ground too,
this fall.
this
No.
fall.
Oh, yeah.
Underground infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's,
yeah, but what I was saying is at least they could start the grading and maybe it's the water main, in the
Yeah.
next, I don't know, but maybe it takes 2 weeks, because if we meet in 2 weeks, then it goes to the city council and that's,
Yeah, so the city council would still have to authorize
Right.
the infrastructure improvements themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the only thing that we could look at a staff level is the land disturbance permit, and
Right.
if they can do the grading of the project without the public infrastructure.
gotcha. I guess, to be honest, I don't know, are those, are the infrastructure plans even fully developed yet or not? I mean, I know, it looks like they gotta be close, yeah.
Yeah.
and what's the timeline on the infrastructure being put in? Do you know? Right,
3 weeks,
okay.
you know, and also dewatering. So I'm not sure about, I know there's water in certain areas. If it's across the board, dewatering might take an extra week.
Yeah.
So,
Depending on what you get when you get in there.
Okay. So.
I would move to table it for 2 weeks.
How do we phrase that, Nate, the proper way? Because we have a public hearing. It's not just a table, right? We have to,
Yeah, so, the motion would be to table the request with the intent to call a special meeting in 2 weeks pending engineer review. I can't speak to our engineer, I can't speak to the applicant's engineer and how much can get squared away in 2 weeks, but we can try to aim for that. But again, we have to then continue some of the notification and call that special meeting. So if it's 2 weeks, we still have to be 10 days out from that. So really, we have to know before that even. So it kind of puts us in a little difficult logistical challenge. Sorry, long-winded answer.
Logistics can be solved, and that's where I was going with my motion. So, I move the table this until 2 weeks from tonight, with the intent of having a special meeting to continue this matter and have city staff do the appropriate notifications to the public, and to have the issues addressed from the engineer and the public works director as best as possible.
that sound good?
Yeah,
Make sure we're not-
so,
So you'd have to have something out by, what, Thursday, Wednesday?
yeah, so, yeah, it would have to be 10 days out before that, that meeting. And we'd go off of so we'd have to actually publish something this Friday, the 15th, if the intention is to then come back on the 25th. So, yeah, I mean,
So,
I don't honestly see a problem with the engineers figuring that out.
okay,
I would actually hope that we would have that today. But
Oh,
by
okay.
I
Yeah.
think that's plenty of time to get this today.
I think one of the bigger ones is probably the only one I see that maybe adds cost is the section, adding additional sand to deal with what we saw in the previous development. And if that's something you guys are okay with, then the rest of it, I think, can just be banged out probably in an hour, 2-hour meeting.
That's right.
Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
okay.
But I think it would give a much better,
Yeah, I think so.
much better understanding of
Yep,
the
yeah,
intent.
and typically when we see one of these with Randy's comments, we've already got kind of
There's been
feedback
dialogue back and forth
already.
for
They're like,
the-
yeah, we can do all that, or, so. And then, the other ones, I guess, storm sewer sizing from the drainage calcs, like, if they're available, be nice to say, yep, we received them and they look good, or, so.
So we have a motion, I will second that motion.
We have a motion and second to table the request with the intent to have a special meeting in 2 weeks.
so just to be clear, the 25th, it'd be at 6 PM. Folks can make that if we make that deadline? Okay, okay.
Let's see here. Works for me.
So we have a motion and a
Bills?
second.
Yep. Motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. Motion, sorry. All in favor of the motion? I just make an assumption. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Okay. So now we jump down to D. The next,
Yeah, so we'd be on item 5D, E, and F. So this is a proposal to preliminary plat and final plat, the project, or the plat, which is titled St. Joseph City Center. So back at the February 8th meeting, Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission did recommend to, that disposal of this property is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. So this is the Fire Hall, Village Hall building, which the city put a request for proposal out, and then we received proposals. One of the proposals was accepted, a purchase agreement was drafted, and acted on by the council. So this is the final step in that process, which just divides the property into two parcels. The one parcel being the Fire Hall, Village Hall, a portion of the Fire Hall, and then the second parcel being the water treatment plant area. So we weren't able to get a developer's agreement attached to this. Administration is still working on the details for that. The developer's agreement for this one is gonna be pretty straightforward. It's just going to have language in there that depicts the common wall areas and like the roofing, to ensure that the purchaser and the city understand who is responsible for what as part of that. So that will be part of what would be presented to the council should the Planning Commission recommend approval on the preliminary and final plat.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah, it would entail a public hearing this evening as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or conduct the public hearing.
Let's just take care of the public hearing right now. All right.
Just formality.
Yep. Okay, we'll open the public hearing for the preliminary and final plat for for a plat titled St. Joseph City Center. Anybody online wishing to speak? There is one person online.
So for anyone who's on Zoom, we're doing the public hearing for the Fire Hall, Village Hall property, St. Joseph City Center plat.
Okay. Not hearing any comments, we'll close the public hearing. Questions, comments for Nate from Planning Commission? I guess one question, I saw it's Zone B1, so do we have a business type identified already? I saw you said it mentioned a developer's agreement.
Yeah, so in the request for proposals, part of what staff evaluated was the folks submitted the proposal and reviewed that and made sure that the proposal was in accordance to B1, and that was part of the criteria that was selected in the chosen project in fitting the B1 character. Yeah.
Okay.
So the plat lines go through a building, correct? It's separating two portions of, this is I understand that a little bit more after your explanation, because I looked at it and said, this plat is cutting in the middle of the building, and that's kind of strange, but now I understand it a little bit better, so.
Yeah, so we were looking at doing what's called a common interest community plat, but this was the route that was recommended from our surveyor. Yep.
Public hearing closed.
Did you close the public hearing? Oh, yeah.
So I'm assuming it's obviously on-street parking for any business type? Okay. And then,
Correct.
the parking lot, the larger parking lot, across, the St. Joe Meat Market and the alley, and I think there's apartments to the east of that, or sorry, to the south of that. So that's not a public parking lot, is it? I was just worried about, are we gonna have parking issues or people complaining about?
Yeah, so if they had any,
Walking across the road.
yeah, so they'd have to have a shared parking agreement with any adjacent private properties. Yeah,
So,
Or provide parking.
yeah. What's that?
I mean, this developer has purchased other properties in that adjacent area.
Okay.
So it's kind of a free-fall
Okay. Gotcha.
idea plan.
All right. That would be nice to make use of that building for the it's,
No, most of the early plats in St. Joe are Roso's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
if we can live with that, if we can live with that name, we can definitely live
Well,
with
of course, you know.
St. Joe.
I will say we are looking at historical aspects related to this property, and maybe there's something historical that fits the plat title.
Yeah, I can't tell you the name of the plat that I live in, so I just think it's not, you have better use of your time. Yeah, thanks. See? So I just think city staff has better use of their time than worrying about the name on a piece of paper. So they can keep it moving. That's my opinion, so.
I will make a motion to approve the preliminary and final plat as in front of us.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
So was that for both of the resolutions?
Yeah, or do we have to do them separate?
Yeah.
She did preliminary and final, so.
If we could do them separate,
Yeah,
sorry.
Start with preliminary.
I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat. He opened the hearing.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion and a second for the preliminary plat. Thanks for catching that, Nate. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries.
I will make a motion approving the final plat.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the final plat resolution. All, any discussion? No. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion carries. All right. Okay. Now we got, just wait, do we go from, 6 is old business. Is there any old business?
Negative.
All right, so on to 7, home occupation discussion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, really just wanted to just have a just brief conversation. In the past few weeks, few months, we received a couple inquiries related to our home occupation standards. And of question was, right now, we allow occupations like teaching, so long as there's no more than one pupil at a time, person at a time at the residence. And really the intent of that is, at what point does that use, like if it's a dance studio, for instance, like if someone has dance classes, they can have one dance person there, but if they have 4 or 5, we technically don't allow it. At what point does it then conflict with adjacent residential uses and create traffic concerns and parking concerns? So I think really the intent of the ordinance is to maintain it. You can do those things, but you can't have more than one person at a time. So I really just wanted to bring it to the Planning Commission and see what the thoughts are for this.
Is there an opportunity, because I just picture my mom teaching piano lessons. So you have a brother and sister doing a duet. Oh, that's 2. She can't do that. That seems.
So it's more,
heavy-handed, but-
yeah, it's more or less geared towards like actual like business type of format where you're having consistent traffic come in
Consistently
and
that, okay.
yeah,
Like you had group tutoring and it was taking 4 kids that happened to be in the same grade coming in for after hours tutoring and a whole.
So
Yeah.
is there a way to get a permit to do?
Clarify, Nate,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry to
go ahead.
interrupt you guys.
No, that's all right.
That language is for the, let's say, regular home occupations, which right now go through a simple administrative.
Yep.
What do you call it?
So
Application.
yeah, so there's
But
2.
In
Yeah.
your ordinance language.
Yep.
It has permitted special home occupations, includes teaching more than one pupil. And it just asks that they're routed through a planning commission meeting to approve a special home occupation, if you wanna teach more than one at a time. Is that not correct?
So I don't see the language that indicates more than one pupil, but that's typically how it would operate if they were to exceed
So I'm
the
under-
regulations.
There it is, 40 on page 40. Is that 49 of our packet?
Yep.
Under yeah, special home.
Oh, gotcha. Yep, you're correct. So, I guess what the question though too is there, is there a need to restrict to 6, 9, 12, 15? I don't know what that magical number is. 'Cause at what point does it then convert over to more of a commercial use? So, is there a need to clarify that even more so than what it may be right now? You can put conditions on it through that special home occupation process, but do we need to clarify that more?
Did you just say that, do we need a limit on how many students you can host at one time under the special home occupation subsection?
Yeah,
That's what you're just
yeah, yep,
suggesting?
yep.
So what does daycare run under? It obviously is not in the same home
So,
occupation.
yeah, so a daycare is essentially a permitted use provided it's under state statute, for residential areas. So it's permitted outright as long as there's license being obtained and there's, procedures followed. So that's the difference between, I know it's kind of confusing because you think of a daycare and they can have, 10, students versus like teaching where maybe they're only having 6 or 7, right? So there's, is it generating the same traffic? Is one causing more conflict than another? So
I think that with today's climate, I think more people are probably considering home or getting them out of, either homeschooling, which I don't think that is what we're talking about because you can teach your children in your own home. You're talking if there's, let's say, a teacher that is decided to teach,
Group homeschool.
yes, group homeschool of they're not their own children or, bring,
I
yeah.
know one person that does that.
Yeah, and I personally would
Yeah,
hate
right.
to limit that because, I don't want people to feel like they're forced to have to go to public school if they can't afford private or however, so.
Then you gotta jump through all this red tape to figure out what you can too.
Yeah, but I get as far as maybe, at what point, at what number does it become, a second, like, do you establish it, okay, for 1 year, all of a sudden now you're at 10, all of a sudden you're a little,
So I actually feel, and I could be wrong, I wonder if the number of students at one given time isn't the factor in terms of limiting that's gonna affect your neighborhood character, or cause the problems that you're worried about so much as like the frequency. And I don't know how you deal with that, because you could say, well, you're not allowed to have more than 10 people on site for a dance class. But if they have a couple of classes a year, and it's really no big deal versus they have
6 classes a night, and, 6 classes a week, 3 days a week.
and that's more the issue you're describing, but I don't know how you would, describe that or limit that.
Yeah, so.
That doesn't necessarily exist yet, or do we have an issue?
So, I guess in a nutshell, really, though, how we have it set up right now through the special home occupation, we can put on those conditions and find out that information. And if it becomes a problem where we're getting obscene traffic, or like say it's a yoga, let's say it's a studio where they start off with 3, 4, and then they grow 5, 6. They have only a couple hours they're open, and now that's 2 hours a day and 3 hours a day, and we can address that through the existing home occupation, I think, through our special conditions.
So we do have some
Yeah.
flexibility with.
Yeah, we do, yep.
What's gonna impact in a neighborhood of 23 twin homes is gonna be different than what's gonna impact somebody in the newly annexed area that's got, no neighbors for the.
I think you're referencing the
Yeah.
yoga studio, which I'm familiar with. That yoga studio has been sold. Those people moved out of town about 3, 4 months ago, actually, because of the student population in the neighborhood. And then actually the person that we just purchased, or we just approved the plat for, bought that property. And I don't know what her intentions are with that property.
Yeah, that might be different, because that's, I think you're thinking of the B1 zone properties, where this is just the residential properties.
Well, that was residential in a commercial area, grandfathered in,
Yeah,
you know, now it has to lapse for a year in order for it to become back to commercial.
yeah, so I'm just thinking of the R1 zone properties, in the community, and, you know, if it makes sense, if we have a process that's working, then we roll with that, and we don't fix it if it's broken.
I agree with Gina. I don't really see at this time adding a group size limit. And I guess the ordinance has it set up to route more than one people at a time through a special home occupation license or label that goes before
Right.
us or whomever, that they
Yeah.
can address the situation seems sufficient.
Perfect.
And I think if city staff needs more support through an ordinance revision or something, then we can readdress it. But I think mainly is that you have the tools you need to do to
Yeah.
do your job and
Question
protect the
made.
integrity and.
Were you bringing it up because folks were assuming that this ordinance said that they were not allowed to have more than one student at a time, period?
Part of that. The other concern that I've heard is if you don't limit, then it's hard to administer because it can become a problem and become out of control. But the fallback to that is that we would attach conditions, and if they're not adhering to those, then we can revoke that. But I think some folks that I've heard from express concern related to, well, what if they have 10 at a time? What if they have 20? What if they have, you know,
And that would be,
Just point all what ifs, or, I mean, do we have any concrete?
so, you know, I don't know, some of it's through the grapevine. Some things might actually turn into applications, some may not. It's just more or less to have the conversation with planning commission to see if there's any strong feelings one way or another.
and in that application, I think we can see what type they're proposing, and then if we think, oh, that's got something for some quick growth.
Yep.
Or maybe not, like, if it's a pottery class, then you probably only have so many different wheels, so five's probably good. But if it's a dance, then you can say, well, anything more than 5, or 7, 10, whatever you decide, once a week, then we review the right to revisit it or something. And I think we can handle that with, is there ability to put conditions in that special?
Yeah, so, you know, some of the bigger concerns can be our parking, right? And
Yes.
if that's not creating conflict, so we'd be able to square away those things and try to address those things as they come up.
I'd rather wait and see
Yeah.
to see if you guys have any issues before we start trying to guess whether 5 or 10 is the right number, because if it's.
There's no magical number?
No,
I'm
'cause
just
if it's-
kidding.
if it's,
I know.
Like
I
Jason,
just,
if
yeah.
it's a 28 townhome development on a dead-end road with no parking on one side.
Is it me, Nate? Are people worried
That could
about
be
me
an
because I teach pottery out of my
No,
garage?
No.
I use that,
So legally,
I use that as
is
a,
it me? Am I the-
I use that as a good example of where that number could probably be higher because of where you live, because it's.
Yeah, so, you know, those
you know
are
what I mean? It's
things.
a good spot for it.
We just want to make sure that planning commission is kind of on par with what staff is thinking.
Yeah.
And making sure that we're not, casting, you know, telling things when it's not. So, yeah, that's why we wanted to bring it forward, so.
Is staff listening to book learning versus application within the community? What's really going on in the community?
Say that again? Are we listening to the
Is staff
grapevine
looking at-
versus
I
the,
mean, you can read
Yeah.
for all kinds of scenarios.
Right.
Take all kinds of webinars or whatever, and different cities bring up different things, and you kind of take home with what you want to take home with for your own community.
yeah, so,
But is it happening in our community? Just from what I know, no,
right.
there's not a problem. So why fix it if it ain't broken?
Which is
Concur,
why we're
yeah.
talking about it tonight.
Yep,
Yeah.
concur.
All right. Any other, so for now, we'll just table until you feel like maybe there's a,
I think I got
Reason why.
the consensus of the commission.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a problem, the person that's applying for it would go through the variance process. There's a, you know,
there's
a
a special
process
permit,
there.
yeah. Okay. All good. Any other, well, that's the end of that one. Any other business? We didn't add anything, so motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
That was awful
All right,
quick.
thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Dang it. We didn't make 10 minutes, did we?
5 hours long back in the
Is that right?
Yeah. It's when the old guard ran downtown.
Yeah. You know, an issue with this thing is they must have known 3 months ago they were gonna do this. And if it's a push because they want to get the infrastructure in the ground, now before when? Why did they wait until
Last
October?
minute.
Yeah.
Well, they probably just sold the idea, CLC probably just sold the idea to the developers.
Yeah.
And I know the background on, because they're on the hook for $5 million out in this industrial park.
Is that right?
In my opinion, it's not gonna develop fast enough.
Yeah.
And then they gotta pay the assessment or their bill on it. And so they're scrambling, they're still trying to get Trovix in there.
I know, yeah,
And they haven't even broke ground yet.
yeah.
So they have to, they have to make that cash wheel keep on turning. Because, it's big numbers.
All of a sudden it becomes our problem.
Right, and, yeah, then they push on it, they got some sucker on the line that's gonna go, whoa, here, we'll give you a $500,000 in, cash influx. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it is, And it's notorious with this group.
I know. See, and I think that was what some of these others were complaining about.
Right,
Is
they
that
make promises and then they say, what they're referring to is the whole long-range transportation plan.
Right.
Well, this will be it's all developer driven.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you can go we haven't had any housing developments.
Right.
Now the market is patio homes,
Right.
townhomes, higher end but then you got the other section, it's gonna be affordable housing.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
No,
here
that's
come the Afghans and everything else that people talk about, who the hell cares?
Yeah.
As long as we can afford to put this, hire 12 more police officers, this and that, and da-da. The students have been actually good this year,
I know.
considering, because I live right in the heart of town.
Do you?
I live right up by the ballpark here.
Oh, okay, okay.
And, so I see all the traffic and whatever, and it's been relatively in the notorious houses, the Schneiders. Those haven't been partying. That's where all the noise comes from.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Yeah. And you,
When
Yeah.
when we first moved here, we were on Second in Minnesota.
okay.
I never found students to be a problem. Through the houses that they were going to were down Minnesota further.
Right.
But, they just walk by, that's
Yeah.
not a big deal, but,
Well, in the last 2-3 years, they'll walk by and scream and yell, which I don't understand, 2-3 in the morning.
huh,
Then we got somebody up by me that likes fireworks.
huh.
So he blows off, they did it last year too.
Yeah, I suppose on that.
So they all just, at odd hours of the night where, people with kids are, it's,
Yeah,
I had them, it was homecoming this weekend, so I had them cutting through our yards. Then they had the balls enough to peek over my fence while I'm sitting out in the backyard.
you should have taken your clothes off.
Yeah, I should have, they never come back.
Then they would have screamed.
Yeah, I thought of that. That's how you get your neighbor to build a fence. You just sit out in the backyard naked. Oh, we don't want to see that.
I don't even want to think about that.
Yeah, but, yeah. Yeah, my last chemo today.
How'd it go?
Good. So I gotta do a PET scan yet in a couple of weeks, and then a final doctor's visit, and then I'm on a 3-month checkup.
Okay.
Good. So, yeah, everything looks good. One more week of feeling like crap. This is my high week, because they put me on steroids.
Okay.
And then you think the second week, you crash.
Okay.
And then I'm on my 3rd week of the cycle right now, or it was. And then you gradually build up where you feel somewhat normal, so one more week of feeling like crap the second week.
I never had to face that.
It wasn't as scary as I went into it when I first got the news. I'm very fortunate. I don't have a lot of these side effects. I didn't have the throw up, the nausea, the water retention, weight loss. I lost my appetite, but my wife made
make it for, make
Yeah,
sure you
makes
eat.
me eat.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not hungry, she'll,
Yeah,
you know. But, yeah, it came out pretty good so far.
good.
So. Somebody's telling mom, hurry up, mom. And that's one thing I recommend to people that have kids, never run for public office. 'Cause I did when my kids were younger.
Yeah.
And it has a different effect on the family. Sure. And I grew up, my dad was in politics.
Right, yeah.
Throughout the, he used to be a judge in this town.
Was that right?
We used to have court in our house. And then when the JPs were illegal,
Yeah. So, did they have an ordinance that allowed more than one person in the house?
For
As an
this?
occupation?
depending upon what, yeah, I mean, who the hell's gonna police that? I mean, you gotta look at that too. I don't have time to sit there, but why, he had a tendency to pull up ordinances that there's no reason to.
Yeah.
But he's a newbie on the block, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I know they really are kind of, it's tough because you have these properties out at the fringe. They want to sell them and develop them, but they kind of get the utilities out there. So it's kind of,
Right,
yeah.
yep, okay, well, I'm just curious.
Yeah, yeah. Did they hold that meeting for the introduce permit thing over at the?
Yeah, yeah, so,
Yeah, did it go up?
you know what, I didn't even actually get feedback from my brother yet, cause it's not, my brother is the one that lives over there. And, literally, I kinda, I think that morning they went, it was on the 5th or something, or last Monday. I mean, I can, when I open my door, and I'm out, you know, in my house, I can hear at 6:30, it was beep, 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 boom, and all, and I'm like, from my house. And,
That's quite the distance.
yeah,
I mean, you're talking about going across the school property and everything.
yeah, well, yeah, up and through the woods and everything, so I,
Yeah.
they,
They do
they're, the
anything
bill, the
extra?
person is not in compliance.
No.
And so, but then he's like, well, I only got so many days left to run anyways, and so it was kinda like,
They're just gonna do what they want the rest of this year, and then is the city gonna try to address some of the concerns?
they had talked about the noise, but they don't think that doing, cause there's no
Burdens
language,
or-
yeah, like how high and how, you know, to help with the sound,
Just a
there's no language.
sufficient height.
Sufficient height, and, but, I mean, when you look at, like, it gets, you know, you look at hard drives compared to that lot, it's like night and day.
Right.
It's a professional operation versus one that, and literally in the morning, or even tonight coming home, big truck, I even seen they had to put cones, cause they must have been taking the corners. And there's a big truck, and here there's a line of cars, and, you know, the road is all full of dirt, and he turns in there, and all the cars are waiting, and,
That dirt tracking was bad this morning when I went out there.
yeah. Well, and I'm sure they probably are careful at school zone time, because going in there, I mean, you know, for me to leave my house, same thing, it's timing, I'm like, either I wanna leave at 7, or I leave
much of it is someone.
No, the county will never, they'll be like, no, cause they'll say, no, it's a collector road, it's supposed to service this, and then you get into, ultimately, it probably should have been designed differently where it encourages people to just slow down.
Right. And when does a collector road become a residential street as growth takes place? You know, at some point, so.
Yeah, no, it was awesome to see people come up though.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll continue working through some of these and.
I think my biggest concern is that, every spring there's a lot of water in that field.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a
You know,
lot
these,
of water.
what's really cool to hear is like the stories about like the beaver and that, like I
Yeah.
would have never knew that.
I didn't
you
know beaver were in there either.
Yeah, so it's really, that's the cool thing about when you do these public hearings is you learn these little tidbits that they know best. They're out there and they know the best, that area the best, so, that's why it's
Yeah.
wonderful. They come up and they show up and voice their concerns,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, that was I think that the biggest problem came out with the map.
Yeah,
Because-
yeah.
Because,
yeah.
you know, the area that was circled in blue
Yeah.
included Line Even Way in many respects. I think a lot of people were thinking that
It would be.
we were talking about changing these lots into,
Yeah, creating traffic problems there.
and then.
Yeah, and that's totally my fault. I should have clarified that in the mailing, and then highlighted it better on there. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
It is what it is. And it's good to get people riled up as well.